So today we're going to be looking at some Marvel superheroes, and this is my original cover, my original book, in all of its well-worn glory. So before we start, I suppose I want to get through a couple of caveats before we go any further. And some of the caveats in that is that this is a game that is the majority of it being theatre of the mind. While lots of other games were also theatre of the mind, they were probably more in the line of 60-40, whereas this is much more like 90%. It did have miniatures, there were some miniatures, and in the modern era you've got obviously night models, and you have Atomic Mass Games, as well as a couple of others, and then you've got the Hero Factory. There's all sorts of places. There's actually another group that are doing all the licensing, and you can get them pre-printed and so on. That's all fine, but the game doesn't lend itself to miniature play in the same way that other games do. Even Boot Hill, the RPG version, is much more like a theatre of the mind, and then you've got the map-based combat, which is very much miniature oriented, because it was a miniature game which burst into a role-playing game. This is a role-playing game. It doesn't really get involved with miniatures. It's a placeholder game in the way that it uses placeholders. We'll explain that in a little bit. So the first thing is theatre of the mind. Second thing is in terms of support for the product. It was pretty slim. At the back of some Dragon magazines, they had an Ares section which was devoted to sci-fi, and they had other games as well, but that's where the Marvel superheroes would likely get some information, as well as Polyhedron, which is a magazine made sort of on the side. So Jeff Grubb did a few interviews, he did some Q&As, he had a few bits and pieces, and some of the other developers that he employed, or he, as in, worked with, they also did a few FAQs and discussions on what they wanted to do, how they wanted it to go, and so on. So all of this builds an idea of a game in concept and a game in progress. So basically, you get the book, you can run it how you want. There's if we go back to what it says at the beginning of the judge's book, this game assumes you know what you're doing. So perhaps it's more valid for a modern era than it was in 1983 to 85, just because by that stage we'd only had 10 years or so since, I think it was like Rabbits and Burrows, or that very first and very early role-playing game. And we've learnt a lot in the last, coming up to 40 years. Yeah. So, theatre of the mind, not a lot of support from the organisation. It's got reasonable amounts of a gap for the judge to fill in. The concepts are reasonably well thought out, so it's easy to extend logic into the directions that you know that they're going. And finally, time frame. So this game was set during the comic book eras, roughly in that late 70s, early 80s. I think it was like Iron Man 298, 299 when he introduced the silver and red suit. So that's where this game is roughly in, because that's the Iron Man suit. Thor has a beard, which is roughly in that space as well. So we're talking the Masters of Evil against the Avengers, and so on. So Storm just lost her powers, or in the universe perhaps not, but it's in that very, very quick, like that sort of area. So basically, as I said, in that 78 to 83, 84, if you wish to keep it into that zone, keep all the tech and keep everything going in that, that's great. So basically, when they talk about advanced high-tech stuff, they're building, things that they've got now. I mean, the Shield and Fantastic Four all had tech that was more like what we were running with, 10, 15 years ago. So they did reasonably well in some of the future proofing. But anyway, so that's the time frame. So you've got the theatre of the mind, you've got the rules, and you've got the era that you wish to have this play in. I kind of like the idea of it being set in that sort of zone, but that's just me. And that's something that I think it's well worth keeping in mind when you're deciding to play a game. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is we can just begin with a little bit about the setting. So this is the map that comes with the advanced set, and it's reasonably well planned and thought out and everything else, and it's generic enough. It's got everything you want. You've got hotels, you've got a few museums, and it makes sort of like and just a good location. As I said before, it's not a miniatures game. You'll see those dotted lines, they represent areas. And those areas are when we say that someone can run 3 areas per round, and if somebody can swing or fly and so on. So in order to go from one side of the map to the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, sort of roughly 14, 15. So that's remarkable flight at full speed. This is zip in 1 round. That's what we're talking about. So what you'll also see is that on some buildings you have more than one area. So an area is one of those concepts of space that is so not defined well that it actually works. So in a small apartment you might have 2, 3 or even 4 areas. In an open street you'll have much larger spaces to play with. Now that concept of indoor and outdoor movement, those of us from the TSR stable are used to it because we sort of get that. And again, they don't need to explain it to us because we can just apply what we need to apply. So they give us a key on one of the buildings down here on what all of the icons represent. Building heights, area borders, machinery, air conditioning ducts, water towers, and so on. So when your characters are in here, they're just running around chilling. So what you might do is use this map or not use this map, because it doesn't really matter. But how you're defining it all, as I said, is mostly theatre of the mind. So this is the placeholder for Daredevil. We have the back and we have the front. It's just a trifold cutout, and that means that he is represented as being right there. So this could mean that he is standing at the top of the hotel or at the front of the park. Essentially, scale is not an issue. This is not how large Daredevil is, and we're not measuring any line of sight. It's essentially, he is standing in the park next to the fountain, and if suddenly he needs to run somewhere, he can just move 1, 2, 3, just like that. He'll get to go anywhere in that space that he wants to go because he has a 3-area movement. That's pretty much how that works. When he wants to throw his billy club, he's got a couple of areas so he can hit someone a couple of areas away. If he wants to try and jump up, this is a level 1 building. It might be an acrobatics check. To get up to the level 6, he may have to jump on the top of the street light or the traffic light and then work his way up there. That might be another acrobatics check. How? Plus he's got his strength, which allows him to jump up a floor or two anyway. So he might just parkour it up and work it from there. So it might take 2 rounds for him to get up. Remember, a round is 6 seconds. So we're not like spending too much time. It's a straight out run to a location. Same thing with combat. Panels of a comic book, people. Panels of a comic book. So that's how we want to try and remember it and envisage it. So from here, if he's here and he wants to get to the top of the tenements, then he might have to jump, jump, jump. And it might take 2 rounds and some acrobatics and tumbling checks. He is Daredevil, so he could probably do it. From here to there is different. So going on to the level 1, going on to level 3, going up to level 6. So he's just constantly going pop, pop, pop. And then 8, then down to 6. How is irrelevant. That all the players will work on all of those things. And it's thematic. It's thematic that he's bouncing around like a jelly bean. That's exactly what you want Daredevil to be doing. Spider-Man will just run up. Right? Spider-Man just runs up. Just goes whip. It runs up to the top of that. Something at 6, he'll use his web as well, and so on. So different heroes do different things, and that's all well worth it. So this is Daredevil chilling. Now he's got special sensors which allow him to see in a zone. So basically, whilst he's in an area, he can almost identify everything in that space as per his power. In terms of his hearing and in terms of his senses, they could go quite a lot of spaces. So every hero is different. Every hero's got a few kicks to them, so that's just something you got to work out. But the question is, how do you play this game? So like, what do you do? Well, you might be the judge might start out saying Daredevil, the player wants to play Daredevil. Daredevil, here you are just swinging by. Perhaps he's gone from Foggy's, from his law office, or he's just out for a breath of fresh air, or even a patrol just to put his presence out. And he's just around the zone. And then whilst he's out, the DM or the judge, sorry, I'm going to say that a lot, that's a drinking game by the way, may have a number of scenarios put aside that just make up generic events, from purse snatching through to something more nefarious, even supervillains. So he might hear that something's happening over at Hunter Jewelry and make his way across. By the time he makes it to here, to the top of Brick Cafe, 3 guys have tumbled out and are about to make their way to the getaway car with their stolen booty. So now Daredevil, the player, decides what they want to do, whether they want to actually follow or whether they want to engage here or whatever. Depending on if this is a random encounter as such, or part of a larger game. It could be the start of something. It could be the beginning of a number of thefts. It could be the middle of a couple of thefts that this particular gang have done. It could be that they're working for a larger villain and they're just collecting some cash for the next big thing. So they're doing some easy hits and they're going to meet up with a fence and that fence will provide them with the money. Easy. So you can expand it out however you wish, but basically Daredevil is here and the guys are there as they tumble out. Again, fold-ups, they all come out from the game, and there are various packs available for picking up additional fold-ups that you just print. You don't need to have really expensive, super duper high-tech miniatures or anything else, because basically all we need is a mud map of where something is and where the people are placed. So So from an indoors point of view again, something like the map could still just say he's here, or that could represent him. You know, it's just a token. As the game says, whether you're using the fold-out cutouts or pizza slices, all it's doing is just representing where the character is currently standing at this point in time. So here's a quick synopsis of Daredevil. Matthew Michael Murdoch. So his stats: FASERIP, health being fighting, agility, strength, endurance. His initial starting karma being reason, intuition, and psyche. Intuition being very high because that's how his senses work, and the way how the goop that got into his eyes that affected the way he can feel what's around him. Enhanced senses, radar sense, and a weapon, a billy club. Does excellent damage, which means does 20 points in this instance. He's blind. His superpower is that he can see. And talents being acrobatics, martial arts, A, B, E, weapon specialist, billy club, and he's law. Yeah, he's got a lawyer. He's a practicing lawyer. Though I think at this time he may have been disbarred. So, yeah, Kingpin. So basically, this is his stats. And doing anything requiring acrobatics adds +1 column shift. And weapon specialist billy club, everything involving the billy club, he gets +2 column shifts to do. At this time, the mechanism for the zip line is removed from his billy club, so he doesn't have it. You can of course put it on there if you wish, but still, that's fine. His endurance is excellent. Aha, there you go. He only actually runs 2 areas per round and not 3. I thought he had remarkable. At remarkable, endurance, and high, you can run 3 areas. At excellent, you're still stuck roughly in that human zone of 2 areas. So, alright, so that's the hero of our piece. Contacts, see the judge's book. Yeah, sort of sees the judge's book. A lot of it is, well, when in this comic he had this, there's actually a lot of that in this game. So you can make use of it, and the judge can always say, not in my universe. That's why he's got poor, because he's disbarred. Popularity, yeah, his relationship with everybody is pretty much hit and miss. He's, yeah, there's a little bit of everything going at once for Daredevil. Kingpin, sort of that. If anyone hasn't read the Born Again saga, it is compulsory reading. Alright, so this is in part where we start to sort of, the judge has to really think about some things ahead of time. And you get used to it, and this is experience. And those of us who have played the game can sort of roughly run with what we think things should be at, and so on. For instance, in this case, the player with Daredevil wants to throw the billy club at thug number 1, and knowing that they've got somewhere between 20 and 30 health, he wants to throw the billy club at thug number 1 and jump down to land at the front of the store. He's currently on the top of Rick's Cafe. Rick's Cafe is a 2-story building. For Daredevil to jump down and land on there, the judge has to think, well, what is the chance of success to do that? Not for Daredevil, but for a normal human being or in a normal scenario. And this is where it's important. So what the judge will say is, okay, a normal human has typical in most of their stats, poor in terms of strength often. So a good result. So versus good means that you have to have some degree of training, who can jump down and land 2 stories without hurting themselves, someone who's trained, someone who's got a little bit of exercise, someone who's like a professional athlete. So you might say, okay, well, that's a good level of difficulty. You might even push it to excellent, but if you wanted to sort of keep good or excellent, then you look at Daredevil's stats. Daredevil has incredible agility, and he's got a +1 for his acrobatics, which takes him up to amazing. Now, if we zip over to the chart, we know that if you can do something 2 ranks or less from your stats, then you can do it almost automatically. You can do it automatically. So an excellent is an automatic success, and a good is automatic success. So from the judge's point of view, they look at it and go, okay, well, good or excellent. To Daredevil, it doesn't matter, because he's jumping down with amazing skill or amazing agility whilst performing acrobatics. He can just land without a problem. So that's pretty much it. If it was someone else that was up there that's not got acrobatics and had, like say, Black Knight. So Black Knight doesn't have the same level of training and isn't. That would have to roll an agility check, and it's probably a green result on his agility in order to be able to do the same thing, because he's a guy in armor. His thing's swinging a sword. His thing isn't the acrobatic jumping being that Daredevil is. And because of his agility, Spider-Man is the same. Spider-Man has amazing. So does Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler will probably just teleport down. But and that sort of thing. So when you're doing something, or when the character wants to do something, don't think of it always in terms of how difficult is it for that character, but think of it in terms of what is required to do that. If the character needed to break a wall, that's the material strength of the wall that you're putting pressure onto. So the material strength of the wall versus the strength to break into or break through the wall. If you've got someone like Thor, they can push through walls so easily. If you've got someone like Captain America, it requires just that little bit of extra oomph, because that's really not his thing, punching through brick. He can, but it's a struggle. And so on. So when you're doing something, that's why in the judge's book they've got those lists of what it's like to have those stats, and then what the characters can do for those stats. So find an alien piece of technology, who can decipher it, you're going to go almost straight away to Reed Richards or Tony Stark, because you know their reason is so high that they can do it. Someone like Hank Pym, no. But if it's a bioform, something biology related, and Hank Pym's on your speed dial, you could probably do that, because those skills that he has will bring up his ranks. So from the judge's point of view, when the player says, and all the player knows is, I want to throw my billy club at thug number 1 and jump down and land right in front of them in that superhero pose there, and probably have some quippy answer, or maybe even the car is there and he lands on top of the car. So that's the other thing. Obviously scenery is how you want it to do. If they're running across the road to get into the car, then because for traffic or whatever. Anyway, so Daredevil can do that. So from here, he's doing a thrown blunt attack, and he's jumping down here. Are the thugs armed? Likely to be armed with pistols, but they're going to obviously have to be able to strike at DD. So Daredevil has +5 for his senses on initiative, and with an additional +1 for his billy club, giving him +6 onto the dice roll. The thugs have 0 value on there to add. So it's a D10 whoever has the highest gets to roll. There is one caveat, and that is if you roll a 1, it remains a 1. So there's that 1 in 10 chance of always losing initiative, well, not always losing, but only having a 1 result. So we'll do DD first. He rolls a 6, which takes it to well over. Takes it well over to 12, which is more than what the thugs who roll a 4, so it doesn't matter. Daredevil gets to have initiative first. So in terms of what he does, as we just described before, he's going to throw his billy club at thug number 1 and then jump down and land at the front of the shop in the same area that the thugs are in. Now if we have a look at throwing blunt, it's an agility. We know his agility is incredible, plus 2 column shifts because of the billy club, so we're rolling on the monstrous table. So rolling, and he rolls a 72. A 72 is well within the yellow zone. And if we consult the chart, should this be a hit? Yep, it is. So it's a hit. So thug number 1 takes a hit of 20 damage, which the judge can mark off however the judge wishes to mark that off. And then lands, jumps down, and lands at the front of the shop. So they've tumbled out of the jewelry store, and Daredevil has thrown his club at 1, jumped down, landed, and the other 2 take shots at firing at Daredevil. So what makes this game a little different also, in something like Dungeons and Dragons, especially in this era, when you're declaring what the players are doing for initiative is done before initiative, the DM remains silent, knowing what the bad guys were going to do, and then initiatives rolled, and then do what they do, and everything else. But here, they actually announce, it's actually declared all beforehand, because dodging is something that players can do. And then that affects, when they dodge, they can still make some attacks, which allow, but they're done at a different loss of column shift. So basically, when it's the declaration of attack, Daredevil would say, the Daredevil's player would say, I'm going to throw my billy club at thug number 1, then I'm going to jump down and land at the front. The judge will say, my 3 guys are shooting, or the 3 thugs are shooting at Daredevil. And Daredevil can also say, well, actually, you want to know something? I'm going to dodge as well, which then would apply a -2 column shift onto his attack, but then he gets to do the dodge, not so much against these guys, but if it was someone with a little bit more accuracy, or the Punisher or something like that, or an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. tracking him down, so on, then the option for dodging may come up. And that's when it's expressed, and that's when it's dealt with, and then they can still act. Evasion and blocking, you cannot attack once you've done those, but dodging you can still attack, and you lose half your movement. So just dropping down to the bottom of the floor, going from level 2 to the ground, doesn't really count as movement, really. That's just gravity. And if Daredevil had wanted to, could make the check for the dodge. And basically, these guys with their typical ability may have been sent down to shift 0. Anyway, so that's the key difference again between this game and some of the others in the stable. But they don't expressly say that, but for the players to be able to say I dodge, you need to give them the opportunity to know what it is that's being done to them, so they can dodge, or evade, or block. Anyway, so now it's the three thugs shooting at Daredevil, and they've got typical, which is all the way down here. We'll take it from there. Alright, so thug number one shooting at Daredevil after just being copped in the head by or in the body. 91, which is a yellow result. And shooting attack is a bullseye, which is just a base hit because they weren't aiming for anything. And so that guy hits Daredevil and that does the firearm worth of damage. Thug number two, 52 is a green, just. And number three is 69, which is another green. So all three shots hit Daredevil as he landed down. Whether or not you wanted to apply a -1 column shift for his escapades, entirely up to you, but for the most part, thugs are generally ordinary when it comes to firearms, so typical is pretty ordinary. And he did land right in front of them, and he did land in an obvious spot, so it makes a little bit of sense. And so he gets 3 shots into him for being shot at, and now he's really angry because that hurts. So a cheap handgun is 6 damage. He just took 3 shots, so he's now down to 92. And it is pretty much stated that in the Marvel universe, firearms aren't as effective as you would imagine they would be. I mean, with a shooting attack, you've got always the option for kill, which is there, so that's always that. But for the most part, weapons, the heroes can take a fair bit of pounding before they fall. All right, so now Daredevil, we're on to round 2, and Daredevil is going to catch his billy club because he's had it returned to him in the same area, bounced it off the guy, hit him, lands, beginning of the next round, catches it, and he is going to, they're all in the same area, so he's going to actually attack the thug number 1 that he hit and thug number 2, both of those with the billy club. So he's going to try and make 2 attacks this round against the opponents. And these guys, they're going to actually come in with, because I just want to highlight some other rules. They're coming in with some punching because maybe they'll have knives, maybe one will have a knife. We'll give thug number 1 a knife, and we'll give the other ones just their general fists, so they can just come in and just try and smack DD a bit more. Alright, so Daredevil wants to make 2 attacks against the thugs, which means that he has to check to see whether or not what penalty he's going to have for that. He has to do a fighting feat against Remarkable. So his natural fighting is incredible, which would generally mean that it's a green result because it's 1 rank or 2 ranks below. However, he gets +2 ranks for his billy club because he's actually using the billy club, which means this Remarkable is an automatic success. So he could try for 3 attacks and aim for a green, or go for an automatic 2 attacks with only the application of -1 for each attack. But so the 2 attacks are a natural default for him in that regard. when he's using his billy club. When he's using his punching with his fists or picking up any other weapon around, we're back to incredible. But with his billy club, we get the 2 column shifts, which brings his fighting up to monstrous. So he gets to make 2 attacks this round. He's going to attack thug number 1 that he's already hit with 20 points. He's going to hit him again. And he's going to hit thug number 2. Both of those attacks will be made at amazing. And then we'll deal with the results after that. And thug number 1 is coming at Daredevil with an edged attack with the knife, and the other 2 are coming at them with blunt attacks. So let's roll for initiative and see where we're going with that. Remembering that a result of 1 is a 1. Daredevil rolls first. 7, which goes to 13. 5, which is fine. So Daredevil jumps in first, and he's going to attack those 2 guys there. There's essentially, it's like a 1/4 inch bubble around your character that is considered adjacent, basically. So you don't have to be exactly adjacent because they're placeholders, but that is good enough. But not good enough to be able to hit that guy as well, but definitely good enough to be able to hit both of those 2. So he's going for thug number 1. He's got the knife. And thug number 2, which is just using his hands. He's just pointing his fingers on that one. So, alright. So thug number 1. So Daredevil is still using his billy club, because obviously that's what he needs to use. And we're on amazing because we lost a rank because of going for 2 attacks, which gives us about a 70% chance of success. So he rolls for his first attack. 11, which is a miss. And he rolls for his second attack, which is a 10, and he misses again. So, not so great for Daredevil, but fine for us because now we get to play with some of the other parts to the characters. So, the edged attack from thug number 1, they've got a good fighting. And he rolls an 18, which is a miss. Thug number 2 comes in with his fists and rolls for a blunt attack on 68. So on good, 68, that's a green result. So Daredevil takes another 6 damage. And the third punk, $89, and 89 puts us in the yellow zone. Blunt attack yellow, slam. Okay, so here we have the slam rule. What we look at is Daredevil's endurance, which is excellent. The thug has 6 strength, so we'll do the 6 damage on that. So he's down to 80. He's got 6 strength versus a typical strength versus an excellent endurance. In order to successfully slam, you need to do damage, which he did, but have a strength equal to or greater than the endurance, which he doesn't have. So slam result, and same with stun results, general, typical, even good strength characters are unable to do that against someone like Daredevil. That's where martial arts A comes in, because you get to slam and stun regardless of strengths and endurances. but our general punks don't have that. So basically, if Daredevil fought Captain America, who has a remarkable endurance, Daredevil would not be in a position to be able to stun or slam Captain America in a general slugfest. However, his martial arts A allows him that ability. And then there is a martial arts D that says that you don't even have to inflict damage. You can bypass that rule, and so on. So A and D allows you to really bypass slamming and stunning against higher endurances and ignoring body armors, not for the damage but just for the effects, which is interesting. So even if there's someone like the Thing who's got a high body armor, there's almost, and a high endurance, there's almost nothing that Daredevil can do to damage Ben Grimm in any way, shape or form. Whereas Captain America, punching Ben Grimm, still can't do any damage, but with his martial arts D, because Cap can do these things, he would be able to still enact flips and throws, stuns and slams against Ben Grimm, even though he's not actually physically doing any damage. The residual damage may still be in play. Throwing him through a wall, throwing him into a wall, throwing him somewhere, and so on. Anyway, and we're back. And so basically martial arts E is a +1 initiative for unarmed combat. But we're using this, and he already gets the +1 for the weapon specialist, so we didn't need to worry about that. All right. So round 3, and you want to know something? Daredevil's going to just try and make this quick. Now that all 3 of them are in melee combat with him, he's going to make an attempt for 3 attacks this round. He's going to add, and when he attacks, we'll see how it goes. So basically, his monstrous check, he needs to get a green result to be able to do 3 attacks with a -1 column shift on each attack. So what he needs is 21 or higher. We know how these go, these dice. And it's a fail. Poor Daredevil. He's having a hard time today. He's having a very hard time today. So that means he gets to only make 1 attack at -3 column shifts. Caught flat-footed, out of position, maybe a bit innocent bystander got in the way. All sorts of things could happen on a regular basis that needs to be done. Maybe there's anything that's happened that just causes him to not be successful in this instance. Who'd have thought that 3 punks would have given Daredevil a hard time. So anyway, so initiative. Daredevil, 7, yep, so that means he automatically pretty much wins, yep. So now he's 1 attack at quite a few minuses, so he's back low down against thug number 1. And he rolls a 91. Which would be in the red result, but it's only in the yellow. Blunt attacks. That's a slam. So not only is the punk knocked unconscious, but had we wanted to, we could still do a slam result. So with a slam, we look at what the thug's endurance is, which is typical, and we see what we're doing. So they've got to make an endurance check, and that was 09. So that's a white result, which is a grand slam, which means going straight back. We're talking about the punk going boom, straight into the wall, or maybe even through a window into the bakery and out for the count. Now the other 2 get to come on through. Remember, they're using their fists. Thug number 1. 32, which is a miss. Thug number 3, 15, which is also a miss. So now we come to the next combat round, and Daredevil's going back to the 2 attacks for the 1 of each guy, and we'll take it from there. What I am going to do is make one of the guys evade. I'm going to make thug number 3 evade, which is using the fighting, and they can get some adjustments here. So he's doing a defensive evade, 56. 56 on good is a green result. The green result on evade is that he avoids the attack. So thug number 3 is doing that. Thug number 2 is going to cop the hit, and Daredevil still has to make 1 attack. He can actually still do his 2 attacks, but we would be generous and say that he's directing them towards 1 of each. So that's when the evade came in. So 1 attack at -1, column shift, against thug number 2. 48. 48 is a green result, which is a hit, and the thug number 2 takes 20 damage. These are all blunt damage. So basically the character is out and knocked out, not killed. The player has to say, I choose to kill, when you're doing blunting damage or any of the blunts or force damage. For shootings, edged attacks, edged weapons, and so on, and things that have the kill result, they will potentially kill. So sometimes the players can pull back the damage or pull back the effect, but oft they can't. But in blunt attacks and in force attacks, you can bring back the damage and the effect. If you just want to reduce everything to hits, you can. If you want to reduce the damage and say, right, I'm only going to do 30 points of damage when I hit, you can do that. So, alright, so Daredevil made his attack. Now it's time for thug number 2, because thug number 3 evaded, and he missed. So it's time for initiative. Daredevil is going to make another 2 attacks because he can without any impact. And what he's going to do is attack 1 on each. Both the guys are going to just fight back. And what Daredevil will do is, on the first attack, he's going to spend karma. And we'll go through how that works. So before Daredevil rolls, he says, I'm spending karma. Just saying that means 10 points of karma is automatically spent. So we'll do initiative first. So Daredevil got a 0, which is 10, goes super high, and 8 doesn't matter. Now, what we have is attack number 1 against the guy. Daredevil said he's spending karma, and he rolls a 35. Now 35 is just in the green zones. So the 10 points that he spends is all that gets spent. That means that his 35 that he just rolled now goes to 45, which is now solidly in the green zone. For points of karma you spend, you can increase it. If he wanted to, if Daredevil wanted to, he could increase. Say, oh, actually I'm after a yellow result. I want to slam this guy. So I need to go from 35 to 56. I'm adding 21 karma if he wanted to. He knows what result he's after. He can add karma to get to that result. If he needs to, wants to just hit and that's it, then the 10 points saying I spend karma, that reduces it to 81. And now that knocks out thug number 2. Now we're on to thug number 3. 79, which is a yellow. So what we do is we do the 20 points of damage onto thug number 3, and thug number 3 has to save versus a slam result. And his typical endurance, 96, which means that he's successfully saved on the slam. Nope. No, he hasn't. 96 is the top end of the yellow. So slam, that's a stagger. So what that just means is just a handful of steps, and the DM, the judge has a small chart to say if it's important which direction they stagger. Sometimes just pushing them out of range is enough in order for them to not be able to attack or something, or push them off a cliff or knock them off a building or something. You can sometimes do other push those effects if you've got, you know, the abilities for it. In this instance, whereabouts he staggers is not as important as just the fact that he's been staggered. So basically the stagger result pushes him out of adjacent range, so just back that beyond quarter inch, roughly, and cannot attack for the rest of this round. So basically, literally staggered, just taking a bit of a hit and pushed back. Now if the, again, as we're saying, if they were on top of a cliff or edge of a building or something and stagger and they fall off, there are some buildings that are quite high, 8 to 10 or 12 stories, which falling off could be kind of harmful. But in this instance, we just move him back away from Daredevil and we get on to the next round. And in this instance, what DD might want to do is jump back and throw his billy club. This guy has to move in to engage because he can still move in anywhere here, but Daredevil can move back out because he's got the range to throw. He could move back out here if he wanted to, well and truly out of range of this guy, knowing how close to being unconscious he is. And we go initiative. Daredevil rolls a 2, rolls a 9. So the punk actually goes first, because Daredevil's plus 6 takes him to 8, and the thug has a 9, which puts him in front. So he moves in to Daredevil and makes a sweeping punch. Or a punch, not sweep. Sweep's a different move. 45. Just missing out on such an heroic attempt. And Daredevil stands back and throws his billy club at the guy. 71, causing a hit, doing enough damage to knock him out. So with 3 thugs down, Daredevil have taken 30 points of damage. So he's a little bit bloodied, a little bit bruised, but otherwise altogether fine. They're now stuck there. Those guys didn't get anywhere after trying to rob the jewelry store, and Daredevil can get on with his day, which could just include going and having a break. He's got a couple of bullet holes and he needs to patch them up, go grab a coffee and deal with it from there. So he's off to get on with his life. Boom, up to level 1, to level 2, to the empty store, over to the hairlines, and he's bouncing around, and away we go. So the aftermath of something like this, we have karma. And karma is returned almost instantly, and we also have the benefit of that happening in public, which means that popularity may also increase depending on what gets done. What we were looking at today is a robbery. So Daredevil gains 20 points for the robbery, and if he put them in a position for them to be arrested, he left enough evidence, they've got the witnesses, they were secure, and if you wanted him to make a law check to make sure that everything was done well, then he gets an extra 10 points. Sometimes you just beat the guy up and leave him laying on by the road and there's no real arrest, then you don't get the arrest portion. But the 20 points and the 10 points for the 30, which means that his karma, which started at 91, reduced to 81 because he spent karma during the battle, now goes up to 111. If it was a pool, you could throw it into a pool. If it was just personal karma like this, it just goes onto his total. If there was a group, so if it was Daredevil, Black Widow, Spider-Man and Hawkeye, say, I don't know, then they could throw in enough to create a group pool, and what they do individually goes to them, but then what they do together goes into that group pool. So like, the Avengers will have a group pool which they can draw on to be able to help them during combats, and then they'll have a personal element which they can still tap into on the side. So there's a lot in here, defeating the types of foes they are, and of course there are on occasions times when heroes commit crimes or perceived to commit crimes. And you've got property destruction, which does happen, especially when you've got Hulk and Thing battling it out. They will destroy a section. And you'll notice that death is minus all your karma. Death is minus all your karma. A noble death and a mysterious death. And so on. Not as much, but still. And then if you give charities or do work for charity, and so on, as well as what I also love, gaming awards for role playing, for doing something that makes the judge go, what? And then of course a humour that just makes the judge laugh. Then you get points for that too. So here we look at the popularity change, see if there's anything that gets done. Defeating a normal villain like what we just did then gains no additional popularity whatsoever. Which sort of explains why Daredevil is quite a low popularity kind of guy, because he rarely goes into battling costume villains. But this has to be done in public. So you can lose in private, win in the street, but if it's the other way around, you'll lose the popularity for that, but whilst you might get the karma for defeating the villain, if nobody sees it, well, you're in trouble. Then you've also got media attacks, like when the Daily Bugle goes after Spider-Man, and your own press you can increase as well from there, depending on what you want to do. So you've got options, but anyway, that's interesting. That goes with that popularity. So popularity and karma are constantly floating, constantly going up and down. And your character, if you decide to stick with one over time, will grow in the same way. So as you learn and you do things, you'll figure it out from there, which is good. So at a certain point, the game sort of bends a little bit into a different direction, and that's when you're dealing with the likes of the Hulk and the Thing. Maybe not so much the Thing, but Thor, Hulk, Hercules, some of those guys who have lots and lots and lots of big stats. Because you'll notice that, especially when you're looking at the points, they go up in relative sort of okay so like the low to mid level, 2, 4, 6, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, then it jumps to 75, 100, then 150, 200 and 500. So the shifts X, Y, Z come in play rarely, but obviously they do. But it depends on the type of characters you're working with. Hulk, who starts off with unearthly strength, increases 1 column shift when he's fighting the same opponent. And meaning at 500 points of damage, when he does his hits, he's knocking everybody out. This is literally when they talk about can't lose a fight, this is the guy. So the Hulk on full beast mode, he's got Shift Z fighting and Shift Z strength, he's not going anywhere. Thor and Hercules, unearthly fighting, unearthly strength, unearthly endurance. That unearthly endurance means that unless you've got the right martial arts skill, you're never going to be stunned or slammed by anybody with less at all. And so on. So basically, Ben Grimm, monstrous strength, that's his biggest hit, that's his biggest stat. Then he's got incredible for body armor, he's got 200 health, like, so he's good, but he's nowhere near the actual level that that Thor and Hercules are in. He's so even the Hulk, the earlier Hulk, he could probably well and truly be matched up with, but the mid to later Hulk, definitely not. And that's one of those things. It's just like, you know, that's how comics work, and that's how power creep is, and so on. So on top of that, you've got you know, body armor's in the way, and a few other things that can blocking. So if you block and you have body armor, then you're taking damage down twice. So if the thing blocks and gets a the column shift, say like a 4 column shift or 2 column shift, then he reduces, like, so 2 column shift on his strength. So he can go down to incredible, so he takes 40 points off. Then when the damage comes through, his body armor is incredible, which takes another 40 points. So there are things like that where you have to sort of play it to sort of work out. And of course, when you're like Ben Grimm, he's got wrestling, so his strength goes up 2 points when he's wrestling. So when he's up against the Thors and so on, he's going to wrestle in the Shift X column. Not do damage at the Shift X, but wrestle in that Shift X. And that's pretty much where he's at for his grappling. So that's how he's going to come in and attack someone that's in other ways. But so there's a certain point where you go, okay, that it doesn't seem to match, but you're not going to get an epic fight between Thor and the Hulk, because the Hulk will eventually just smack and Thor will go down, which Thor does. And basically Thor has to block, he has to evade, he has to do all these things. He has to hit with Mjolnir every now and then. He's got to work out how he's going to do it. There's a little bit of thinking involved if you want those epic battles. And there's a little bit of, from the judge's side, if the judge is playing the Hulk, how much is the Hulk pulling their punch? Because the Hulk is a hero. The Abomination, not, but the Hulk, yes. So the Hulk is a hero, and so the Hulk has Banner inside acting as a bit of a conscience. So yes, his strength might be at Shift X, Y, Z, but he might still only be doing, 40, 50 points of damage, but he's attacking with a Shift X strength. So basically everybody that's unearthly endurance and less, he's stunning and slamming. And that's what you might want to go for in some spots. So it's not so much that it's a work for both the player and the judge. Remember, this game assumes you know what you're doing. So you're going to have to work out how you want some of these ideas played out. but you've got lots and lots of ways of getting things to work in your favor. And just because they work in the comics, it doesn't mean it's going to work in the role-playing game. But they do their best, and it's a good attempt. So overall, what we've just gone into today, so we talked a little bit about an encounter. Doing the role-playing side is between the encounters, and in that one where Daredevil took out the 3 thugs, were they just was it like a random encounter just rolled up? Is that what the judge is doing? It's almost like a hex crawl as such, as we would call them. Or is it part of a larger scheme? Oh no, they didn't get those gems, they're going to have to try again later. Or was it a specific gem that jewelry had? Perhaps someone reaches out to Daredevil to say, talk to the guy. Or perhaps one of his snitches comes back and says, you've interrupted a major deal. Now they're going to come in and have to knock over one of the banks or an antique or something. So the players need to constantly be thinking, who are my contacts and what can I do? Okay, so I have the underground, I'm a criminal element, squeeze, what do they do? What do they know? And that's when you do just your checks. What do they do know? What they don't know? Make a random roll. Determine what the color is. And yeah, they know nothing. They know enough. They say come back in an hour. They say come back in a day. They say they're not going to help you because you caused too much trouble. And so on. And when you look at what the players, what the heroes do in the comics, they're constant, especially the street level ones, they are pushing their contacts. Captain America has different types of adventures than, say, Daredevil, but ultimately he will contact someone for assistance, whether it's access to the computer, whether it's connecting into the Avengers database, whether it's, if he's on the West Coast, he'll catch up with Hawkeye, or Hawkeye will want to catch up with him because Hawkeye absolutely loves Captain America. And so on. So you might have like a bit of a, I thought you could use some help, or I thought you could, just want to hang out. Play it up and really have some fun. It's not as tricky as it may seem, but you do need to know where you want the adventure to go and where you want it to run with. Some of the modules that they've got out there for these adventures, they're okay. They're reasonably well written. They require a fair bit of work if you're going to use someone other than the heroes provided for the adventure, because quite often they'll have something specific to the Fantastic Four or to the X-Men or to 3 or 4 Avengers or to street level heroes and so on. But making up your own work, that's where it's fun. And making up your own character, that's where it's also fun. Get that character out there and introduce themselves. And see what they can do. So, but yeah. So there's a little bit of working out. But it's worth it, and the game is good. It's solid. The charts are really well planned. FASERIP is a good system. Hopefully, I've covered enough to sort of spark some more interest. We'll sort of see how the comments go, and if everyone likes it, please like, subscribe, etc. We'll get back into some of the other games. I know that I've had a couple of questions about some of the like D&D, so I've got enough for a bit of a rarely asked questions. But what I wanted to just go through was just another part of the TSR stable, which is fantastic, and we love it. And it's a good system, still holds water today. It's actually one of, the Mayfair game is good. The Mayfair system is good for DC, and it works well with DC. Whereas this kind of works well with a lot of different types of superheroes, or even just modern heroes. If you want to just change the nature of what those ranks represent, you can do so. So the actual game has legs in this one. You can expand it a little bit more, and I think some people do. I think some people have moved it into other aspects. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little jaunt down memory lane, and if you haven't had a chance to play it, I think it's available at your favorite download store. There's a couple of resources where you can get it as well, and do so, enjoy, read through it, and have fun. So alright, so thank you very much for your time and patience, and I appreciate everybody and all your support and all the people that help along the way. Any questions, please send them down. Any thoughts you want to see, please send them down. I'll see what I can do. I've got a lot, I don't have everything. I've got things, but you know, it's just we do what we can. And I will catch up with everybody hopefully the next time we run one of these, and we'll so have fun, stay safe, and hopefully we'll get the next one out as soon as possible. All right, thank you very much everyone, really appreciate it. Bye.